All right, I'm going to mute
Try
myself
to
and give you the
try to
floor,
look the
sir.
part. Okay, thank you. Well, hello, Zoom friends. I can't see anybody. I never can see anybody on this thing, but I'm assuming you're out there. Today we have the privilege to talk about the exciting topic of the inspection contingency. Very exciting stuff. Riveting reading if you haven't had a chance to look at this contingency removal addendum at some point. So we'll jump right in. Basically, the first thing worth mentioning, I think, are, is related on the first page where it talks about having a home inspection done. This used to not have language in here where you had to have a licensed home inspector to do the inspection. So they've changed that in the RAIN contract in recent years. We used to have situations where folks were ready to release for one reason or another, and they would go through the home and do a quote unquote inspection, walk through, and then send that release. So that's no longer okay. So you've got to have that licensed inspector to do that inspection. Then once that's done, paragraph 2 is related to the deadline contingency removal release period. So you negotiate the time when that has to actually be sent over. The contract I'm looking at right now has 7 days. Typically you see 7, 10, 14 days on there. And in that time period, the buyer, and this is pretty much for the sake of the buyer, you've got a certain amount of time to send over, or you got a few options here. First, if the inspection is done and there are items addressed or items that need to be addressed that your buyers wish to have looked at, you have to your first option is to send over the property inspection contingency removal addendum, and that's stating that for the sake of the buyer, we wish to remove this contingency, or we will remove the contingency on the following conditions, and we want you to repair X, Y, and Z. It's important that the inspection report is attached with that, so the sellers get the benefit of looking at the report. And so that's the first option. You send that over. The second option, numbers 2 and 3, kind of in the same vein. If that inspection report turns out to where the buyers are just, no amount of repairs will make them happy, then they send over the purchase agreement release and or the purchase agreement termination. So that within that 7 days, the buyer sends that over and they're able to get out of the contract. And then third option is to do nothing. So, right now, inventory is low. Your buyer may decide, hey, we've made 12 offers already, and this is the first one we've had ratified. So let's just go ahead with this thing. So couple of options. They could do nothing, the third option there. And then by doing nothing, basically the contingency is deemed satisfied, considered removed, and the agreement shall remain in full force and effect. You don't even get down to the negotiation period if your buyer decides to do that. So, or the inspection, the report could be clean, and they go, you know what? Hey, we're great. We'll take this. So the option to do nothing is available to the buyer, and that keeps things moving on slowly, or not slowly, but perhaps it's not as quickly as if they went ahead and submitted a report that said no repairs are necessary. That's an option, sort of in the same vein. Susan and I were just discussing that on the property inspection contingency removal addendum. There is box A in here, no repairs necessary. So they could send that over perhaps sooner, before the end of that time period listed when they have to respond, just to go ahead and let the other side know that, yep, we're happy with the condition of the property and we don't need to do anything. I'm not sure the benefit of that, but we can talk about that. So let's say then, so if they submit the report, they want some items addressed, we get down into the negotiation period. Now, at that point, there's a 5-day window. So the report is delivered the following day. That starts the time frame for 5 days for the negotiations. So your buyer submits the PICRA with some repairs. The seller strikes through, in the common course of things, the seller can strike through some things, agree to do everything, or strike through it all and send it back. And so those 5 days are the time for the parties to negotiate. Now, let's say if nothing's agreed upon, the parties can't come to a resolution. The 6th day, the buyer is given the option. So, and you really want to pay attention to these deadlines here. So that 6th day is the additional day where the buyer has the option to either terminate. They can say, you know what, they're not going to do what we need them to do. They can get out of it, or they can say, you know what, we're fine. We're going to take this thing. We're going to go forward. The seller is not granted that option on the additional day. It's that is the buyer's privilege there on that 6th day. Now, in the end of that day comes then the 7th day. Of course, either party is able to get out of the contract at that point. But those are the time frames there, and it's very important to obviously have a grasp on that. And I think in the times that we've bought and sold a home, our agent made sure that we understood those time frames. So we laid it out in the beginning, so we knew what we were dealing with. And I think something that's been good advice for me, being a professional advising folks on, how to address certain situations. You present to your client the options, and then you let ultimately the decision be theirs. So and that way, if they're on board with you and they're understanding these time frames, then they're the ones ultimately deciding to make those calls. So those are kind of the time frames there. Oh, and I did think it's worth mentioning the time frame in paragraph 2 to actually send over that inspection report is from the date of ratification. And ratification is defined in paragraph 2 as the final written acceptance of all terms of the agreement. So that's when the time frame starts. You've got those whatever you negotiate there, those days to submit that report. And that starts from the date that the contract is fully accepted. And then these are days. These are not business banking days. Holidays are included. Weekends are included. Starts at 12 o'clock a.m. and then runs through 11:59 p.m. So any questions on those time frames?
There is one. Kara says, home inspections for informational purposes only. Is the buyer still protected to release from the contract during the agreed upon period? Now, I know the answer to this, Austin. I will let you dive into that.
So if the home inspection, so they put down in here, the home inspection is for informational purposes only. They basically said that they're not going to ask the seller to make any repairs.
Well,
yeah. So I think the same
informational purposes only. They did not state they were not making it. They said just for informational purposes only.
Sure. I don't think it precludes them necessarily from sending it over. But, I think, usually when you see that, the seller's already basically said, we're not doing anything. So I think, you're always free to negotiate the contract, but you'd want to make sure to pay attention to those timelines there. So if you were to send over, you wanted to go ahead and try to renegotiate something with the seller at that point, you could send over the inspection contingency removal addendum with some repairs, but obviously keeping a mind on, where things are at that point. If you get
where that it's not contingent upon that, and that would actually get you out correct. Like you can actually write in that you're not looking for repairs. It's not contingent. And then that's when there's no contingency there. When you release the contingency and actually put in there that it's not contingent, then you're okay. It's whenever, right. So on the other side, let's say that we're the seller and you receive that contract that says informational purposes only, correct that, mark through or add a line with initials that says contingency will be removed, no repairs will be requested per the home inspection.
Yeah,
That's
once that date appears and comes and goes, if they haven't released in that time frame, they're in there. So unless they can get out for another reason, of course, which
Susan looks like she is wanting to say something. I can see it in her eyes. So I'm going to unmute her. Maybe not. I don't know. She looks like it though. Did you want to say something, Susan? Oh wait, you have to hit unmute.
I can't see Susan.
I can see Susan, but I can't hear her.
There
she is. Did you want to say something? You look like you did.
You all already said this, but if it's not contingent, then they don't have to. I mean, basically, it doesn't matter what they do during that time frame. They can have the inspection, but they don't have to submit. They can't submit a termination or a release if it's not contingent. Yeah, but I agree with you, Thomasina. The listing agents need to be careful because otherwise, I think it's vague. It's not clarified.
It is vague. Yeah. I actually had somebody that went attorney to attorney one time on it. So that's the only reason I was like, Lucy says also if there is a PICA, there must be a PICRA regardless of the ask for repairs. No.
Yeah, I mean, I think you wouldn't have to get into
I don't think there
PICRA.
has to be. If there's a PICA and the time frame has run out, because it states that once the time frame runs out, that's it. So I think it covers
at the end of paragraph 2.
On that one, Lucy. Austin, Susan, weigh in.
Yeah, at the end of paragraph 2, should no removal addendum be sent over, then the contingencies are deemed satisfied, considered removed, and the agreement shall remain in full force and effect.
Yeah, they added that, Lucy. It wasn't in there before, but it has been added in. So that actually covered it because it was that we had to send a PICRA before. That's a good argument. PICRA, I always say PICA and PICRA. But they did used to have that list. They added that line in, which actually allows us to not have to do that after the time frame. After the time frame, of course. Correct, Susan, Austin? Yes, no? Yes, okay. And then Sarah Grace said, I've also added in there that any repairs requested are added to the purchase price. Time runs out, so it's waived. That's right, time runs out.
I think she was commenting on what you just said, so I think the first sentence is separate. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I've also added in there that any repairs requested are added to the purchase price. And then she said that's right for the second. Okay, gotcha for the, she just said second part was for the PICRA and PICRA. Okay. Time runs out, so it's waived. Yeah, correct, Sarah Grace, correct. So anyway, she's just saying she's added in there any repairs requested are added to the purchase price, which is also a good line if everybody agrees upon. I agree with that as well. Gosh, I wonder who her broker was. Congratulations to Sarah Grace, who is now a broker as well, everybody. So she has passed her brokers. Very proud of her for that. She said, I wonder. So good job. All right. Sorry, Austin. I think that's all the questions. Just want to make sure. Yep, that's it so far.
Okay. I think Susan is going to now quiz everybody.
Yeah, I did a quiz that I just sent to you. We could either screen share it or I could just put it in the chat. You want me to put it in the chat?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just do one question at a time in the chat.
Sure.
I'm not sure
Put
that
it right in
it
the
will
chat.
fit. So let's see here. This is just a chat. Let's find chat. There we go. Let's see.
Oh, here I have it. I can copy and paste it while you talk. I have it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll do it for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So this is just a very simple. Most of you all know the answers to all of these. So the first is a true/false question, and you can, in your reaction section, you can vote with a thumbs up if it's true, or the face that goes, oh, if it's false. Okay. So the first true/false question is, the buyer may terminate the contract without doing a home inspection so long as it is prior to the deadline. So can they just not do an inspection and terminate the contract? Who thinks that's true? Put a thumbs up. If you think it's false, do a reaction of some kind.
Looks like a lot of falses. Usually the first person who answers, everybody follows suit. So, that's how that usually goes. False, right. False. Everyone's false so far.
Does anyone want to give the reason why you think? Let's see, Kara, since you're up there, do you want to argue for why you think it is false? Or maybe not. Looks like she's muted. Anybody else? Sarah Grace, do you want to give you the explanation? I guess they can't unmute.
Sorry, I was unmuting.
Okay.
So when you're writing up the PICRA, it specifically says that you have to use a licensed contractor to do an inspection in order to release. So that would be either release or, even to submit a PICRA.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I mean, it used to not be quite so clear, and I used to tell people they could, but Rain has, of course, in their wisdom, continued to modify the PICRA, the PICA, and it does use the word shall. Buyer shall perform, and if you check the block home inspection, I believe now that you do have to do one before you can submit a termination and release. It used to be you could just go walk around the house and it would show on the lockbox code you'd been in. And so you could sort of pretend you've done a home inspection, but now like you said, it says the word shall, and it says it has to be by a licensed home inspector.
So I have a question about that. Actually, I've had it in the past where somebody has, gone in and, had the so-called home inspection by opening the lockbox, but they were there for 15 minutes and, that wasn't going to happen. And the home inspection belongs to the buyer anyway. How do you go about proving that there was actually one completed?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think you could say, and again, this is not 100% as clear cut as I would like it to be, but I think you could ask for some proof as you're the listing agent before your client signs off on a release agreement. I think you could at least ask for maybe the receipt or something like that to show they had paid the home inspector. Some
Okay.
proof, even if
Thank
they don't
you.
want to turn over the report.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. So, of course, it may be they had the home inspector come out for 15 minutes. So,
Right.
and they paid them $75. So. All right. So let's see. Question 2. If we have time, do we have time, Thomasine? I don't want to.
No, you're good. You're good. I'm going to put question 2 up right now. Go ahead.
Question 2, true or false, either party may terminate the contract at the end of day 5 of the negotiation period if the parties have not finalized a removal addendum. That's probably an easy one. So if you think it's true, let's see. Lots of falses. Okay, Michael, since you answered first, would you explain why it is false? Okay.
We just went over it, right?
It's you were listening. Okay.
Yeah. The seller doesn't have any option to terminate the agreement. Only the buyer does.
Yep, that's exactly right. Okay, so that was too easy for you Spark people. So we'll go on to number 3. Number 3, and I'll read it to you while Thomasine is cutting and pasting it over there. Seller, this is a yes or no question. Seller counters the PICRA on day 2 of the negotiation period. So the buyer submitted a PICRA, the seller counters it. The buyer decides she really doesn't want the house and sends a release and termination on day 3. Seller, who sees the writing on the wall, withdraws the counter and accepts the buyer's original PICRA. Is the removal addendum now deemed executed and fully binding? So please vote yes or no. So Jordan says no. Let's see who else, anybody else. This is what I think is a tricky one. But, okay, no one else is voting. It doesn't look like. Jordan, would you like to say why you think the answer is no to that question?
So the reason that I said no is because once changes are made and submitted and received by both parties, that's then a form of a counter offer. Just like you can't submit an offer, counter it, and then go back and accept the original offer. It's the same on the PICRA.
Yeah, that's what Austin and I discussed this before the meeting, because the language in the PICA in paragraph 2B, I believe, is a little confusing. But under contract law, like you just said, Jordan, once a PICRA is submitted, if the seller counters it, that original PICRA does not exist anymore. That document does not exist. So under contract law, you're exactly right. The seller cannot revive the PICRA that has been basically no longer exists because of the counter. Now, I do think that the language that Rain has put in here makes it a little unclear to people, because it says at any time during the negotiation period, buyer or seller may make, extend, or alter offers and counter offers as desired to finalize the removal addendum. And that use of the word alter offers and counter offers would lead one to believe that the seller could alter their counteroffer by just accepting the original PICRA. So I feel like Rain has muddied the waters here, but under contract law, your answer is correct. Austin, I don't know if you feel any differently than that, or Thomasina.
Yeah, and I think just like Jordan said, I mean, when a counter offer is made, the original offer has died, and you know, the option is to accept that counter offer or to counter the counter. So I don't think you can go back in time. But yeah, the language is a bit muddied for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if Cindy's on the call. She knows why Rain did it that way, but
Yeah, she's not. She's
yeah.
at a meeting.
Okay. Right.
I agree, though. I agree with Jordan, Austin.
So number 4, let's see, question number 4. This is a yes or a no question. At the walkthrough, all of the repairs are not complete in a workmanlike manner. May the buyer terminate the contract at that time? So if anyone wants
Put
to
your
vote.
answers up, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, we got a no and a yes. Whoa. And they're from people that have been with me for a while. Would like to hear both of them for sure, because I highly value that. I love it whenever I have two people that have been with me for a while and they both have different answers, because we can go down that rabbit hole. That's for sure. All right. So we got no's and yeses all over the place. So I am going to pick Jordan and Sarah Grace on this one. Okay, Jordan, you go first and explain your yes.
Okay, so it is definitely muddy water, but the seller agreed to do the repairs in a certain manner. So a lot of it depends on the definition of workmanlike manner and whether the repairs are actually done and complete, or if they're just not done the way that the buyer likes them. If they are done and complete, then I would say no, they can't get out of it. But if they're not completed, or they're done just terribly, where anybody with another license would come in and say, no, that's not done correctly, then I think the buyer could terminate at that time, because the seller had agreed to certain terms, and they are then in breach of the contract by not abiding within the terms that they had already agreed to.
Okay, let's hear your counterpart, Sarah Grace.
So I learned quite a bit for with a transaction that was assigned to Jason Swingo, and John McLaren helped me with this one. So basically, Jason said there was a scratch in the floor, and he wanted to get out of it because the original contract said that the washer and dryer were not to convey. So the owners took the washer and dryer. He assumed he was getting the washer and dryer, threw a big fit about it. So he said that the workman-like manner did not happen because the floor got scratched underneath the refrigerator when it was being removed. So basically, even with him, he said that, we had to give, an amount of time to get walkthrough items completed. And I guess that would be for, appraisal required repairs as well as the PICRA items. Even if, walkthrough wasn't satisfactory, you have to give the owner a chance to fix that.
Okay, Susan Walker, weigh in on both of those opinions.
Maybe Austin and I should pit against each other on this. I don't know. So I think the scenarios that Jordan and Sarah Grace described, I feel are different, slightly different scenarios, because in Jordan's scenario, they were PICRA items. The seller knew exactly what was supposed to be done, and had a list, and was supposed to contractually have them done in a workmanlike manner. And there's not a grace period in the contract to extend for not doing work, because the seller didn't manage to get it done in a workmanlike manner. I'm not sure that's a fair result in this market where you can't get contractors very easily. But I believe the contract does not provide a basis for extension. It could get down to substantiality, and if the repairs are substantially complete, and it's just something minor, you might be on thinner ice terminating there if it's something that's trivial, as opposed to, yeah, this is just not a good job and they botched it or they haven't done it. Sarah Grace's scenario, because it wasn't a home inspection item, if I understand it, it was more of a walkthrough situation where there was damage to the property that was discovered on the walkthrough that had occurred after the original inspection. And I feel like that's less clear. What do you think, Austin?
Yeah, well, and I did want to comment. So I think it depends also when the walkthrough inspection was. So you've got your closing date, and usually they're pretty close. But certainly, if the walkthrough is maybe 2 or 3 days before, or possibly the Friday before closings on Monday, I think certainly in that instance, the seller would have an opportunity before the closing date. It's clear anyway. I think that they would have an opportunity to get that done. But as you mentioned, Susan, there is no extension of the contract due to PIC repairs, and they have obligated themselves pursuant to the contingency removal addendum to have these repairs done, prior to the walkthrough. I mean, that's, in black and white there. But in contract law, typically, if, whenever there's a breach of the contract, a party is entitled to a right to cure the default. And, I think I've heard Susan say many times it's going to come down to the materiality of the repair. If it was, a minor thing versus something major. But I've counseled folks before that this is kind of a muddy area. And if you've got somebody with sort of, that's got cold feet and is looking to possibly move on, this is an area where you provide that opportunity for a buyer possibly to move on from a property, is if repairs were not done in the proper way. But
so agreed upon repairs for PIC ref not done in a workmanlike manner and a walkthrough are noticed, it can be terminated unless an agreed upon extension is signed. Is that what I'm hearing as the final answer?
Yeah, I think so. But I think if you get there and there's something that's pretty small, like the painter, they missed one little piece of trim board or something like that, or it's obviously something where it's a nitpicky, the repairs are substantially complete. I think the buyer could have a hard time terminating in that situation because there's been substantial performance materially the seller has performed. But if they get there and none of the windows have been replaced that were supposed to be replaced across this, whatever side of the house, even if it's not the seller's fault because the windows were on back order, I'm afraid that gives the buyer a right. And so I think that's something that a listing agent and a seller need to think about, and perhaps especially with windows and things like that, where you end up having to order them and they're on back order half the time, is you may want to put something in the PICRA that if materials cannot be delivered, the parties will agree to some sort of, either a post-closing escrow or something like that, and would still go forward with closing if those materials have not been delivered and installed by the date of closing. So just a thought, because I know these days it's rough trying to get work done when you have to order things.
Yeah, especially like in the summer, we had a shortage of wood material. So we always put that in there that, if available, will be completed. If not, will be completed upon arrival of materials with proof of back order, or with proof of delay, and could result in escrow moving forward.
That's good foresight there, Thomasina. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I do think Sarah Grace's scenario was slightly different because it was walkthrough and it was something that was new. I don't know if it's, I would be hesitant if I were representing that buyer to counsel them that they can terminate the contract over a new scratch in the floor. So, yeah.
I guess you could do the termination, but would it hold up in a court, right? Would it hold up in court of law? That would be the biggest thing, right? Because you can do the termination for sure by verbiage of the contract, but would it hold up in court if one decided to sue the other?
Right. Yeah, and at very least, it's going to hold up getting your EMD back, even if the seller didn't do anything other than resist on the EMD. So.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to put the other question up.
The rest of them aren't related to PICRA. I didn't know if we're on short time, Thomasina.
No, you're good. We have till 11, so you're good.
Okay. So let's see, number 5, these are the last 2 questions here aren't related to the inspection contingency. I just branched out just a little bit. True, false, the contract closing date under paragraph 8 has passed along with any applicable grace period. The contract is now deemed expired without any further action. True or false? Anyone wants to vote?
Answers up. Oh, Nikki and Munesh said true. Jordan, Nikki, and Munesh will speak on this one. They're the first ones up. Keep going, guys. Anyone else false? Okay, Nikki or Munesh, whoever wants to speak, go ahead and unmute.
Yep, it's me, Nikki here.
Hello.
Hi. So I think because all the date has passed and the grace period time has passed, now they are in breach of contract. So the contract is expired, and so that's true.
Okay. Anybody want to take the contrary position?
Anyone?
Let's see, we'll pick on someone.
Susan never picks on anyone. This is just cracking me up.
Adam, are you listening?
Yes, ma'am.
What do you think?
I defer to the experts. I'm sorry. I know nothing.
Sorry, I'm being a bad professor here, picking on students.
I was a PhD student, not a law student. I'm sorry.
I had a professor who had a deck of cards, and I think he pretended he had each student's name written on the top, and he would just.
I would counter, but I don't want to be the one to, I would like someone else to try it. If Jean was on here, I think she would counter it. She is in a closing.
Right.
So.
She's good at that.
Yeah. Yeah, she is very good at that. Well, Austin, why don't you counter it?
Well, I think the best answer is I don't have the contract in front of me. I need to look at the contract.
Oh,
What does the contract say? All I've got is the PICRA in front of me.
Well, Thomasina, do you want to take the counter?
I think I might want to take the counter. So under paragraph 8, the time date has passed along with any applicable grace period, meaning our 10-day period is gone as well. The contract is now deemed expired without any further action. So that's the part that got me, without any further action. So even though the contract date has run out, there's no termination that was sent over. There's no release that is sent over. So there's further actions that need to be done. One, the contract is not fully terminated. Unilateral termination can be sent, right? It's out of contract date, that's for sure. The termination has not been sent. The ability for the EMD cannot be procured or given because nothing has been signed on that. And depending on why we have went past, there could be a breach of contract here. So without any further action, there's still more further action, in my opinion, that needs to happen, especially that breach of contract, depending on why this has happened and why we're continuing on and who did what. So there could be a breach of contract on both or one side of this.
Yeah.
Now, that is my argument, so I say false.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Thomasina, I'd have to agree with you. The contract, Nikki, is terminable by the non-defaulting party, but until the non-defaulting party does something to terminate the contract, it doesn't just naturally die. It has to be killed, I guess I would say. In the language that Thomasina was referring to, and let's say the seller hasn't cleared title or something like that in the 10-day period, or it's not the 10 days, the seller hasn't done the repairs and it's day 1 after the closing date. So if the sentence is, if through no fault of the buyer, settlement has not occurred by the settlement date, then buyer at buyer's option may terminate this agreement by written notice to the seller. So if the buyer doesn't choose to terminate it, it's still alive. And sometimes that's what the buyer wants, or the reverse party, it could be they don't want to terminate it. So but it doesn't naturally expire.
She said both parties would have to agree to extend, correct or not?
That's an interesting question. I don't know that say it's a situation of a title issue and the seller hasn't gotten it done within the 10 days, but the buyer wants to give them more time. So I think that's up to the buyer Now, the mortgage company may require a written extension. That's the problem you run into from a practical standpoint is the lender may require an addendum. And what if the seller doesn't want to sell it for some reason? They've got a better offer, and they're just dragging their feet, hoping the buyer will go away. I think if the seller is the one who hasn't cured, hasn't fixed the title defect, I think the seller's not in the driver's seat and would have to agree. I think it automatically extends. But you do have a problem if you have a lender who requires a signed addendum and the seller doesn't want to sign it. And then we have a practical problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
So good discussion, everybody.
Wonderful. Okay, we have one more. And I'm putting that up now. Go ahead, Susan.
This is an easy one. True or false? The property is in a homeowners association. The buyer finds a better house. The buyer must wait to terminate the contract until the seller provides the association disclosure package. So in other words, they don't want the house anymore. Do they have to, is it true that they have to wait till they get the association packet before they can terminate?
Answers up. This one's pretty easy. Oh, we got some back and forth. We got some back and forth. No, yes, true, false. Ooh. Okay, so I'm going to pick on someone who says yes, and I also want to know where in the contract it states that for you to pull that up for me, so that where you got your answer. Let's do Michael. Michael, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, couldn't get off mute. I mean, coming into this and having gone through all this stuff, I mean, my gut says that you had an agreement back and forth between the parties, and that your only way out is to review the property association documents and determine whether or not it's acceptable to you. The disclosure package.
Anybody have the contract in front of them besides me, Susan, and Austin by chance? Nikki, you want to take a shot at it? You're a yes. Nikki Munesh?
Yes, I would have to agree with Michael, because you have to receive the condo docs to not agree upon it to come out of the contract.
Okay, Jordan, take the floor. You're our first no.
Sorry, I couldn't get off mute. So I was trying to pull up the contract, but I am 90% sure that there is verbiage in there that says the buyer can terminate any time prior to receiving the package and up to 3 days after receiving the package.
Susan, you are up to bat.
Yes, Jordan, that's right. And I've got a POA addendum. You can't see it on the screen, but
Yes.
there's a bold sentence there at the end of paragraph 2, bold and capitalized. I guess Rain wanted to emphasize this. It says, since the act provides that the buyer has the right to receive the disclosure package and the right to terminate and the right to cancel, it follows that the buyer has the privilege to terminate the agreement at any time prior to receipt of the disclosure packet. So that's consistent with Virginia law, but Rain has emphasized that in there.
Yes.
And I agree with you all that sometimes results in an unfair, it may seem not right, as far as the bargaining that the parties have done, but contractually and by law, they are allowed to terminate even if they haven't gotten the packet yet to review it.
I will tell you this. So the reason I'm so proud of these people that keep speaking up, that have been with me for so long. So back in the day, when they first started with me, they had to sit in a room with me, and they had, I would go over the contract with them, and I'd paraphrase each section, each paragraph. And then I made them paraphrase it back to me. They were only allowed to miss 2. And if they missed 2, they had to start over again. This went on for days. Then when they finally got the paraphrasing done, I started throwing in the craziest questions you could think of. And they had to find it in they couldn't say yes or no, they had to find it in the contract and actually read it to me as to why their answer was correct. So these people went through weeks of me beating the crap out of them with contracts. So I am very proud whenever they were like, okay, that's why I said, who's got the contract up in front of them? Because every time someone answers with me, usually I say, okay, show me in the contract where you came to your conclusion, because there may be something in there I've even missed over the years.
Yeah.
So once they show me in the contract, I go, okay, well, let me show you where I see it. And I always show them in the contract where it's correct or not correct, so they know. So now everybody on here now knows in that paragraph, it's boldly stated that you can, without the paperwork, release for it. So even though this was an easy one that you thought of, it wasn't. And I knew that was going to happen, which was going to be great. So you're like, this is an easy one. I was like, woo, woo.
Boy, I think if I came to your class, I might have to bring meals for a week because I probably wouldn't get out of it.
Poor Kevin, back in the day, Kevin, he he sat there. We ended up changing into like pajamas and ordering pizza because he didn't want to leave. And that whole class didn't leave till 1 a.m. because they wanted it done. They wanted it done that night. And I said, I'll sit here with you. And we ordered pizza and got it done.
Wow.
Yeah. Jenny Mack was in that class.
Oh, that would have been fun.
It was quite some time. Okay. We got people that love it. Can we do that again? Let's do it again. I love this. I learned a lot. Get it, mentor, Christy said. That's good to know, Nikki. They love this. So this question and answer is something they all love. It's all in here about them just loving it to death. Thank you so much, Susan and Austin.
All right. Thank you all.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Lucy, I'm going to let you have the floor. Lucy is up next. Lucy.
Bye-bye. See you later.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you. Go right ahead.
I'm pretty much just going to sound like a broken record. Please submit your documents. Please don't wait till you want your commission check to submit your documents. People who have been doing it can attest that if you've got all your documents in place, when you submit your walkthrough, even if closing is a couple days away, I will go back through your file. If everything is there, I will clear it for payment. So the minute that check hits, Carla can process and you can get paid. So if you do all your things, I will clear you and you will get paid faster instead of us going back and forth about what is needed and what is missing and why it's being held up. I have gone back over my checklists and I am going to put them in the files in Facebook after this meeting. So they will be front and center accessible to you all with the requirements and what the office requires and the necessary documents. If you are
asterisk 2, if you want to talk about that, that should be done by today, and along with the moving of the termination, if you want to talk about that too, Lucy.
Okay, so in broker mint, we are going to, well, we being Thomasina and me waving behind her, Thomasina is going to put 2 asterisks next to each of the documents that are required in our contract packages. So you've got your buyer consultation checklist, all the required documents will be starred in there. Then you've got your purchase general, the required documents will be starred in there. Keep in mind that if you've got POA, condo, PICA, you've got very often follow-on completion documents, the part 2 to each of those that will then be required. If we come into a situation like we talked about earlier, where the PICA timeline has run out and there is not going to be a PICRA, you need to ask for an exemption and you need to put in the comments, timeline ran out, nothing was submitted, so I can clear it and we can mark it off the list. So each one of those checklists is going to have the starred items for you. In conjunction with that, to help keep things a little cleaner with our listings that are kind of running through this gamut of lots of terminations because buyers are being flighty because there's so much to choose from, we're finding that it's becoming a tangled mess. So we're going to move the termination and release documents over to the purchase general checklist, so that when you have a termination, that's where you're going to put them. Because technically, if you have a termination and a release, you've not gotten to closing. So it really shouldn't be in the closing checklist. So that's where you're going to look for those, is over in the purchase general checklist after today, instead of the closing checklist. So those are those things. In addition to the PICRA situation, anytime you have a required document that you're not going to have for some reason or another, please make sure to put in the comments why you are asking for an exemption. Because I can only reject that exemption and ask the question why, and then we're back and forth and back and forth. If you tell me why, if it's, well, Lucy, I can't do this because it's new construction. Well, that's great. Put in the comments, new construction, not applicable. And with land, we run into those things. So there are unique situations. There are times when it's just not possible, and that's fine. We just need to know why, and we need to have that documented for when we let it go. I don't really have anything else other than submit your documents. Please submit your documents. I can't see them. I can't do anything with them. Even if I can see them, I can't approve them or reject them unless they're submitted.
Yep. So by submitting those, she means to go up to the top and actually click the drop down and hit submit. So uploading the documents does not submit them. You have to actually hit the submit button.